Hello, today we're going to discuss Unit 8, right? The first three sections from Unit 8 in grammar and vocabulary. And the first thing we find there is police and agreement. This is a very simple unit, right? But remember, police are, right? It has a plural agreement. I hope you remember other words that have plural agreement like people, right? People are, right? But people were killed, right? People are out. But news, unexpectedly, is singular. What is the latest news, right? That's great news. And another thing we're going to see in this unit is this question of what do we do when we want to say one piece of news? So that's what we do. We use a piece of something, right? So if we go to the basics, we'll have a list of countable and uncountable words. And here you get the ones that are uncountable and countable. But what happens with advice, for example? Well, you can also use a piece of advice, right? To count pieces of advice the way we do in Spanish, right? So let me just check. Right, let me give you a piece of advice or some advice, right, or a word of advice. Some is also very useful. As regards news, what we use is item, right? So an item of news, right? You can also speak of a piece of news, right? The news item, right? I wanted another one. That's the only one. And also we can use it for luggage, right? An item of luggage, right? And with money we use a certain amount of money, right? Now remember that as regards diseases like the flu, cancer, measles, and other pains, there's variation, right? We speak of I have stomach ache, I have backache, and I have toothache. But Americans may say I have a toothache, right? We also say I have a sore throat and I have a cold, don't we? So we just need to tread carefully, right? Because the combinations here may not be equal to what they are in Spanish, and that's basically the main piece of advice that I can give you, right? I don't know. Experience is an uncountable word, right? Experience. My experience is, but you may refer to my experiences are as I don't know, as a doctor, right? Let's see. Right, as you can see, just one option, right? Share your experiences of parenthood, right? I don't know. I'm thinking of other words that I come across as countable in your compositions, like chaos, un caos in castellano, but in English, there's chaos. There's total chaos, political, domestic, whatever. In chaos, plunge into chaos, but there isn't a chaos, right? I'll have some fruit, or pass me a fruit, right? Piercings are not countable, sorry. We don't speak of a piercing, right? You can speak of a piercing look, but these are adjectives. Let's see. As a noun, right? She has a tongue piercing, but we wouldn't say a piercing. I'm wondering what they wanted here. It's the same, right? Tattooing and body piercing as an uncountable word, right? But it says here countable. Okay. But you can have multiple ear piercings, right? What you don't say is I have two piercings. Usually you speak of body piercing, right? Or she has piercings. I'm trying to look for more examples, right? But basically try to be careful with these words. So let's go on following the entry from the book. In section 1, we find some names And actually, it's about the use of the article, right? But there are also some references to words that are generally used um, as well, our abstract nouns are usually uncountable, right? Like advice, which I have already mentioned, and you say some advice, right? And excitement, you would say there is excitement. Y tal vez en castellano decimos hay una excitación tremenda, right? So in this respect, for example, as regards luck, we can speak of a stroke of luck, right? And I would like to talk about some words that you typically use as countable are not ellipsis, reference, substitution, right? When talking about grammar, when we talk about cohesion, and I usually hear there's an ellipsis here, there's a reference, there's a substitution, and that's not possible. You can say there's a case of ellipsis, a case of reference, a case of substitution, right? Or simply there is ellipsis, there is reference, there is substitution, right? Or this word substitutes another one, or even an example of ellipsis, an example of reference, or an example of substitution, right? Okay, I recommend the activities because they're really nice. In this unit in particular, you're going to find many, many idioms like hold you in good stead or stand you in good stead, right? Maybe we can look this up. Stand in good. Let's see if it will help me. Okay, there it is. Knowing languages will stand you in good stead, right? Your languages will stand you in good stead when it comes to finding a job, right? Okay. Beauty is said to be skin deep, that you know, or in the eye of the beholder, right? To stomp off in high dudgeon, right? Many idioms that we're going to see when we look at the activities, right? Section 2 reminds you of what I said at the very beginning, that people and police are plural, right? But news and maths are singular. And now we go to maths, right? Remember, maths is British English, math American English, right? So no S in American English. And this brings us to the topic of collective nouns, right? What do we do? Remember in an earlier video, I looked up family because it is a collective noun. And I used to have an example here that said my family is, are, and it has disappear. Right? As you can see, it's gone. I swear to God, I saw it here, right? But it's gone. Now, what happens with words like army? Let's see if they have something. Army. Is it the army is or the army are? Well, let's stay away from it, right? As you can see, try to avoid the issue altogether. Now, what happens with these words? Initially, they can have both singular and plural agreement, right? They do not I mean, actually, they're interchangeable. The thing is that when you use singular agreement, you see the collective noun, by the way, collective, the collective noun as a unit, right? Whereas when you use plural agreement, you see that the idea that the group as a lot of individuals, right? I'm wondering whether there was no, there wasn't an entry to explain this, right? And in some books it says that, well, British English uses either, and that maybe there's a tendency in American English to use singular agreement, though frankly this varies a lot, right? But what Fowler tells us very appropriately is that so long as attendant pronouns are made to follow suit. So if I use jury, for example, and I say when the jury retires, so I'm using singular agreement, to consider its verdict, right? But if I say when the jury retire, to consider their verdict, right? So I need to be consistent, right? There are many other words that are plural in reference in English, is especially inanimate objects, some of which we have already mentioned, like baggage, china, cutlery, linen, and all of these take singular agreement, right? And sometimes you can use certain words like to help you, right? Like a handful of members, with other words, right? Or a number of monuments, or a group of people, or a fleet of helicopters, right? That will help you sort of count these words, right? All right, then there will be more idiomatic expressions. And when we go to section 3, frankly, I have no comments. Once again, we'll find lots and lots of words for us to discuss in class, and expressions like something sticks in your throat, all right? That's a very nice, or actually in your craw. Something sticks in your throat or your craw, right? Which is where birds keep their food, right? When something is difficult to say, right? She wanted to say how sorry she was, but words seem to stick in her throat, right? And we also have other idioms. Well, I haven't got his address to hand, right? A bird in hand is worth two in the bush. To live from hand to mouth, which maybe you don't know, right? From hand to mouth, which means when you're very poor, right? You have barely enough money to survive and to gain the upper hand, right? To have control over that, over others. Right. I'm going too fast, right? Let's see now. I like the expression, well, what is happening? Let me just go back in case there's something I did. Okay, and it doesn't look wrong. So a kick in the teeth, a kick in the teeth, right, or in the backside. But this is something emotional, right? Job losses, unfortunately, are a kick in the teeth for the union, right? Okay, so when we meet to talk about this, we'll talk a lot about the activities, right? Thank you very much. That is all.